I can hear something calling. It's calling me every day. If taking a chance is a crime, then I've got hell to pay. I've been walking the streets in my mind, trying to find a new day. Keep on searching until I will find, until I find a new way. I'm gonna say something, I hope you don't mind. It's time to rearrange. I walk round in circles, I'm going nowhere. It's time to make a change.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Charles Wallace. Today's guest is a life coach for executives. He deals a lot with mindset, and he helps them gain clarity and develop resilience. So please, without further ado, let's jump into my interview with Adam Smith. Adam, how you doing today? Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Well, thank you very much for having me, mate. This is why I love starting these conversations, because this is what it's all about. And I feel like as men, we're really missing this true level of connection too. So I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think what you just stated there, it's so important. I'm sure we'll get into some of that. Before we start, though, would you mind giving a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So I run a business called A-Game Consultancy. So it's all about being on your A game, the best you can be. We've been in operation for around 3 years now. We started out calling ourselves a health and well-being company, but that's really just scratching the surface of what we do. So now it's very much around high performance coaching. So we do mindset coaching using NLP, conversational style as well, but hypnosis, DNA testing, blood testing. We do men's retreats, group work, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, it's not just aimed at men. They are the vast majority of our client base, but we do work with female clients as well. And yeah, we work with corporate businesses, typically executives, CEOs, business owners, that kind of thing. And yeah, we just help them make their life better, essentially, in a nutshell.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. I was doing a little research about you, checking out your social media, LinkedIn, your web page, and there was a lot of really cool stuff there. You mentioned mindset coaching. Could you let's start here maybe. Can you share a pivotal moment in your life that led you to pursue mindset coaching?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've always been fascinated by people and why we do what we do, from a very young age, because I've got ADHD and dyspraxia, and both of these things were undiagnosed till I was in my teens. So people just thought I was noisy and disruptive and disinterested, but I couldn't keep up with the way that we were being taught. So everything was written down on a blackboard or a whiteboard, then you had to look down, then you had to look up, you'd lose your spot, and it was just a nightmare. So I just started looking around the room instead, and people thought I was daydreaming, and to an extent I was, of course, but I'd be so fascinated by the teacher yelling at a kid, how the kid reacted to the teacher, and then how that interaction would go. I just find that so interesting from such an early age. And I noticed these patterns carry on throughout most of my teens and all that kind of thing. So I started studying it. I started looking into a guy called Paul McKenna. That led me to Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and Les Brown and Zig Ziglar and some of the great speakers of our time. So I've really studied self-development since I was about 18, and I'm 35 now, and not a lot of people knew that about me. So on the outside, I was like the air quote, dumb jock, as it were. I didn't have many qualifications, but I was good at sport, and that's what I really lent into. But behind the scenes, I was studying, I was researching, I was reading papers, watching videos around human behavior and why we do what we do, why we sabotage ourselves, why when we know that we want to lose weight, do we keep having the takeout and drinking the beer? So, why would any human being do that to themselves? Things like that just really fascinate me. But even though I had all this knowledge towards the end of my 20s, when I was working in hospitality, I was managing a large venue. I had a team of around 60 or 70 people. We were doing, 70 to 100K in sales a week. It was a very busy unit. And it just really impacted me in such a negative way. My life started to unravel around me. I was very much doing depressed with my behaviors. I was drinking too much, eating takeout, not exercising, not spending time with loved ones, neglecting my relationship, doing drugs, smoking, every mistake you could almost make for performance, I was doing it. And that compounded. And in that period of like a 3 or 4 month period, I my relationship ended because who'd want to be with that guy that wasn't paying attention to and treating his body like a dumpster fire? My bosses let me go because I wasn't performing. In that time, I lost 3 family members due to a variety of different reasons. And I just thought, like, I'm now 30, and I thought I'd have the wife, the kids, the house, the car, the white picket fence, and the dog. My reality was I'm single, unemployed, not homeless because I could have gone to live with my parents, but certainly having to look for a house now. Overweight, miserable, 3 family members down, and I thought this is not the blueprint that I had planned out for my life. And fast forward a few months, things started to get a little bit better. Got a job that I liked and started going to therapy, but it just wasn't enough at that time. And about 6 months later, I got a phone call in the morning from a good friend of mine, and his father had a heart attack in the middle of the night and passed away. And he was 50. He was fit, healthy, just went in his sleep. And I had this like instantaneous grief, where I just started crying uncontrollably in that moment because everything that had compounded before really just came to the forefronts. And I remember being at the wake, and I was drinking so much at the time anyway that 8 or 10 beers was nothing. So I drank God knows how much at the wake. And then I just thought, I'm just going to end it. What's the point? Because I've got nothing to live for now. So I just wanted the pain to stop on reflection. I didn't want to kill myself. I just wanted the pain to end. So I got in the car, driving in the car at like 100 miles an hour with every intention of crashing the car. I didn't want to cause harm to anybody else. I just wanted to crash it into a wall or a bridge or a post or anything. And as I was approaching it, I got a few 100 feet away and I just got a phone call. It just said mum and it came up on the dashboard. And I pressed accept. And yeah, she just said, "Oh, you've left your wallet here. Do you want me to drop it off for you?" And as soon as I heard a voice, something just clicked and I slammed the brakes on and the car just spun out of control. Luckily, no one was hurt. And I was pulled up into a lay-by and just sobbed for hours. And I just, oddly, after on reflection, I started just bringing in things to be grateful for because I was like, what was I about to do this for? Why was I doing this? I've got a mother that loves me. I've got a supportive family. I've got friends. I've got my health. Granted, I wasn't very healthy, but I certainly wasn't dying. And yeah, I need to change this. So over the last 6 years or so, or 5 years or so, I've just started to rebuild myself brick by brick using the tools that I know that I have at my disposal, but actually actioning them as opposed to just hoping things will get better. So that was a real pivotal moment for me. And then halfway through that transformation, I stopped drinking alcohol, and that just 10x'd my life in every single way imaginable. And then here we are today.
Man, that I was starting to get some chills honestly when you were talking about the driving, 100 miles an hour. That's scary. I'm glad your mom called when she did. Um, so how does that impact you overcoming those personal challenges such as the suicidal thoughts, even your journey through sobriety? How does it shape your perspective on mental health, on resilience, and now your professional philosophy?
Yeah, outward facing, I would say, to friends during my 20s, when I wasn't very well, let's be honest. My coach reframed that for me actually when I spoke to him about the guilt and the shame that I experienced through some of my behavior. He just said you weren't well. And I never looked at it like that before. You know, I just always thought it's something you do in your 20s. You drink, you have one night stands, you do the drugs, da 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 da. No, it's that you just weren't well. Someone that is mentally well doesn't do that sort of stuff. So, but outward facing, I would say, oh, suicide, selfish, you know, as if you could leave a family behind. That's ridiculous. But I've had suicidal ideation throughout most of my life. Not that I'd ever come close to doing it before, but with the ADHD, it has huge impacts and ramifications on your emotional intelligence, and you really take a lot of things personally. So I still don't respond to criticism very well. I could get a throwaway negative comment on LinkedIn and it hurts for about 5 minutes. It used to be 5 days, you know, and I used to get really frustrated by it and confused by it. Whereas now I've got a lot more emotional intelligence to cope with it and realize it's not about me, it's about them. But yeah, I think it shifted knowing that I did go to that place and I wasn't far behind, because you feel like a burden. You feel like you're doing the world a favor if you take your life. That's how I felt. And when I've looked into public speakers or authors or videos in general of people that have survived their suicide attempt, most of them say the same thing, that during the act, you go, oh, some people it's too late. I don't want to go into graphic detail here and make people feel uncomfortable, but in my instance, it wasn't an instantaneous thing. It could have been on impact, perhaps, but not the same as some other ways, as you can probably imagine. So I had a mini time to reflect. Somebody jumped off, I think it was the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and just as his feet left the bridge, he regretted it. And he survived somehow. But he's a motivational speaker now. I can't remember his name. So that's shifted a lot. It's made me a lot more empathetic. It's made me a lot more compassionate. It's made me kinder. When a client says, you know, I just can't change or it's impossible, I know what they really mean now, you know. They feel like it's impossible and they feel like they can't change. So yeah, it's altered it in many great ways. There's still a little bit of guilt and shame that I'm working through with my coach now about what nearly happened that day, and would my relationship at the time have ended if I didn't do this differently or that differently, and things like that. But yeah, I think it's just made me a more rounded person, and it's really happened for me, not to me.
So it's obviously it's impacted you, and it seems like you've really you've done a lot as far as your own coaching. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that have come of that, some of your techniques and your approaches, because reading about it, it was actually fascinating and stuff that, quite frankly, I wasn't aware of. And as for me, obviously, Adam, I'm always looking to learn myself. So selfishly, having somebody like you on is as much a learning for me as for everybody else. But the one thing that really jumped out at me, and I couldn't wait to ask you about this, was the NLP, the neuro linguistic programming, how to help your clients like reframe their thoughts and behaviors. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Of course, yeah. So neuro is sights, sounds, feelings, experiences, things like that. Linguistic is the words that we say to ourselves every day, and the weight that some of those words carry. And then programming is just a combination of previous events, belief systems, labels, etc. So we have to look at everything. And when I pull people up on it, when I first start my relationship with them, I have to explain to them I'm not trying to be clever and I'm not trying to trip them up or be pedantic, but we often catastrophize things as human beings, and we don't always do it through actions. Most of the time, it starts with words. So, for example, people might say, oh, I've had an absolute disaster of a day. Now, of course, I know what they mean. It's not been a good day. I get that completely. But when I bring it to attention and you look at what the word disaster means, it's very different. People say, I've always struggled with anxiety. Now, in the literal sense, it's not always. So it's me, have always, it's never been different, struggled. Struggled is a great fight from a restraint. That's the definition of the word, with an object, anxiety being said object. So I really deconstruct the sentences and the words that they're using, Because again, I say always, and they go, yeah, always. Well, it's not always. What do you mean? You didn't come out of the womb being anxious. Now, you might have had something passed down genetically where your mother or father might have had severe crippling, anxiety disorder. But for the most part, you've probably developed a poor strategy for dealing with anxious moments. It's a bit more wordy, granted, and people don't use it as frequently, but it just softens it. It just makes you understand that actually the problem isn't as bad as perhaps I'm making it out to be. And one example I give to people when they start catastrophizing their thoughts and their emotions is if you were going down the freeway and you burst a tire, would you get out and slash the other three? Of course not. So, and they go, well, no, that'd be ridiculous. So why are we concerning ourselves with something that's happening in 3 weeks' time? Why are we stockpiling every little inconvenience in the course of our day to derive our thinking right now? It's already happened. So people say to me like, oh, I should have gone to the gym yesterday. But the reality is you didn't do that. And nobody cares if you did, apart from you. So you can decide whether to still care about it or not. And it is that simple. It's not that easy, but it is that simple. So I have to look at the way that they view the world. Everyone's got a different view of the world, not only in terms of political stances and what have you, but if I do it as a corporate training exercise, I show 10 to 20 people the same photo. It might be of like the New York City skyline, but there's a couple on the Empire State Building that are posing in front of said skyline. What do you see? Some people say architecture, some people say love, some people say a beautiful woman, some people say a great skyline, some people say taxis. So everyone's got a different view of the world, and that's exactly the same with our day to day. So I have to understand what their view of the world is before I impart my view of the world onto them. So I just challenge merely the words and language they're using, because it doesn't really matter what I think. I have to just reframe them to make their mind a better place to live. So most of our beliefs start from the age of 4 to 7 years of age. So if you can do the work and understand where the belief began, you can change the meaning attached to it. So typically speaking, with men that are in, the millennial to boomer generation, their fathers weren't physically or emotionally available as much as the mum was, because typically dad went out to work and mum stayed at home. So what might happen is you might come home from school as a young boy and say, Mummy, look at my artwork. She might say, wow, this is amazing. This is brilliant. I'm going to put it on the fridge where everyone can see. There's a problem there. And the problem with that is that they've acknowledged the achievement before they've acknowledged you. So if instead she said, oh, hang on a second, come give me a cuddle. Oh, I love you so much. Now, what do we have here? Did you do this? Wow, we're going to put it on the fridge where everyone can see. It's so subtle, but you're acknowledging the person first. Then dad might come home after a hard day's work. Dad, what's wrong? Oh, well, look at this. Okay, great. Oh, now, straight away, dad's almost dismissed you. He's dismissed your emotions and he's dismissed your achievement. But you have now thought in your tiny little mind, right? Okay, so dad's standoffish. Dad doesn't want to talk. Dad wants to close up. Rejection breeds obsession. So I'm going to become a little bit obsessed with trying to get dad's love now and do everything that I can. So good behavior doesn't work. So maybe I need to do bad behavior. Or maybe I need to start behaving like him, which is just to completely close off. So when people say men bottle things up, air quote, that's not factually correct. It's probably that they've been punished for showing emotion at an early age. That then can show up on the negative with mum, being that you search for validation through achievement, and it can show up through dad about, I'm just going to shut off completely and not talk to anyone. So that's what I do with people. I dive into their backstory and understand what that is, because that will create all the sort of thought processes, actions, labels, and beliefs that they have about themselves in the present day if you don't heal it.
As you were saying that, I was fascinated thinking back to, because I'm 52. So growing up, my dad was literally coming in from job one, having dinner before he was going out for job two.
Mhm.
And, I'm grateful though, as I hear you talk, because I see the scenario, my mom with the artwork, my mom was fantastic with that, right? It didn't matter what it was great. And I always will appreciate that. And, my dad, it was cool. Hurry up. We have to eat dinner. Get your cleats because you have practice. I have deliveries for pizza, but I'm taking you with me to
Mhm.
drive you around before I drop you off. So, yeah, but I do get what you're saying, and it's fascinating to me. When you start to talk about a little bit, and I could see this in people, I experienced this myself, but I've always thought about when it comes to, I think we will make things in our mind way bigger than they actually are. And I believe that's our own limiting beliefs. How do you help people dismantle those self-limiting beliefs?
Great question, and my favorite to answer because I get asked this quite a lot. So I have two different processes for this, and they're both 4-point plans, so they're quite easy to follow, but they're both helpful. So um, you want to look at it for what it is, not worse than it is. Then you have to look at it for better than it is. Then you have to deal with the reality of the situation. So, I don't know. Let's say, you could say deal with the reality of the situation is the first point. Let's say someone's overweight. Okay, so I was overweight. I was 130 kilograms, which was about 20 stone, which is a lot of pounds. I was a big boy, but I'm 6'4", so not many people thought I was like heavily overweight to look at me, but I was. I was carrying a lot of weight. So that was my reality. Now I have to deal with that reality. No one's going to do it for me, but I have to start slow. So to not look at it for worse than it is, I'm a fat idiot. No one likes me. I can't change. I'm always going to be like this. What's the point? Who cares? Right? That's worse than it is. What it is, I'm a bit overweight based off my own metric of what I perceive a healthy weight to be. Because the first thing, if you said to someone, describe this man in front of me, it wouldn't have been he's overweight. It might have been he's a big guy or whatever. I don't know. They might have said 10 things. But in my mind, no, I'm overweight. I'm overweight. Okay, cool. So I want to look at this for what it is. It's not ideal. I used to be a personal trainer, so I know how to eat healthily. I know how to exercise. I can probably sort this out quite quickly, or at least get some good wins. And look at it for better than it is. I want to be lean. I want to be fast. I want to be strong. I want to be in the peak condition. I'm going to eat healthily, drink water, exercise, hire a trainer, and I'm going to feel so much more confident in myself. So that's one process you can do. Another one is like a bit of a hybrid from someone known as Byron Katie. She's got a great book called Loving What Is, and I've done my own little spin on this. So the first one is when you have a negative thought about yourself, keeping in mind you have around 2,000 thoughts an hour, and we've got a negativity bias in our brain. So around 80% of these thoughts are going to be quite negative, or at least trying to protect you from something. So if you have a thought come in, I'm worthless and I'm stupid, is that true? That's the first question you need to ask yourself. Now, when you're really down on yourself, you might go, yeah, it's true. I hate myself, right? But the second question can be, can I say with 100% certainty that that's true? That you're an idiot and that you're stupid and no one's going to like you? Well, no. Okay, it's not true. Great. Who would you be without that thought? You go, I'd be more confident. Yeah. I'd be happier. I'd be kinder to myself. I'd probably be kinder to others as well because I only judge them because I judge me. Okay. What's a more helpful thought than idiot, moron, stupid, no friends, no future? A more helpful thought. I am kind. I am a good person. And yeah, I really care about others. And, I work hard. Great. Now, to skip out all of that, the one question that is honestly, I don't like to say things for effect for no reason. This has helped change my life. This one question, what's a more helpful thought? Because it's not false positivity, it's just more helpful. So when we did our first men's retreat, we had 10 people sign up. And then about 3 weeks before the event, 3 people dropped out. And the day before, another person dropped out. And I was so agitated. I rang my coach. I said, I can't believe it. We've only got 6 people on our first retreat. This is ridiculous. He said, what's a more helpful thought, Adam? It's like, what do you mean? What's a more helpful way of looking at this? We've got 6 people on our first retreat. He went, there you go. He's like, what else? And I said, we'll have more time with them. We'll have more impact. The testimonials will be better. The connection will be better. And we've learned a lesson for next time. Great. So for anyone listening right now, no matter how difficult the situation might be, I've worked with cancer patients. I've worked with people whose have both parents die in a car accident, you name it. This method works because we're not dancing around the garden saying there's no weeds here. What we are saying is there are weeds, more helpful thought. I can get outside and I can start attacking some of them weeds. That's what we want to look at. So you can literally apply that to any scenario. Stuck in traffic, more helpful thought. I get to listen to my podcast, and at least I'm not in the fiery car, in the fiery car wreck, rather. Boss spoke to me in a really negative way today. More helpful thought. At least I've still got a job. I can leave this one if I want to. So you can literally apply it to almost any scenario, and it works.
That is great advice. I feel like I do it some, but not enough. And as you were talking about, I was thinking about my day yesterday going, wow, I probably should have utilized that question during this encounter. But yes, thanks for that answer. Adam, this kind of fascinated me also. You work with high performers, I'll call them. And I think when we see high performers, you talk about helping the high performers achieve their full potential. How difficult is it when someone's already performing at a high level to start to help them get even that little bit more, that incremental bit more out of them to start to get them even to another level?
Another great question. Now, I just want to start by saying this, that I've been challenged on this in the past where people say, why do you only work with high performers? And what's interesting is that's their view of the world around what a high performer is. In my opinion, a high performer is anyone that wants to better themselves. And you don't have to be a specific job title. I work with CEOs of multi-million-pound corporations and I work with bartenders. It doesn't matter to me what the title is of somebody. But with that being said, I have to look at the big picture. So because success is completely subjective. So I work with some millionaires that are overweight and have got a bit of a drinking problem. So they're successful in business, but they're not necessarily successful with their body. You might say Jeff Bezos is the world's most successful man. Not in marriage, he's not, because he's divorced. So financially, yes. Business, yes. Entrepreneurial mindset, yes. Relationships, not so sure. Maybe ask his ex-wife. So I have to look at their life and start to see where the blind spot is. Hence why it's called a blind spot. They can't necessarily see it. So they might say, oh, my sleep's bad. Their sleep's bad because they're anxious. They're anxious because they've had an argument with their partner and they snapped at their partner. They snap at their partner because their father used to do that too. They've mirrored the behavior. And people might say it's not that deep. It's always that deep. People don't just do things for no reason. When people say things to me like, he's just an asshole. No, he's not. He's probably got tendencies of being an asshole and he's probably very miserable. He's probably very miserable because of something that's happening in his life day to day or may have happened in the past. So I just look at the whole picture. You know, we've worked with professional athletes, but they don't, some of them don't eat that well, surprisingly. So it might be they've got a issue with their gut microbiome. And while I don't fix that problem directly, my business partner does because he's a nutritional therapist. So I can help them with the mind, productivity, organization, clarity, structure. He helps them more with what's going on inside the body. So even if on the surface they're millionaires, successful, happy wife, happy life, etc., they might have a real bad health issue they're not even aware of. So we look into that side of it too. So yeah, I guess that's essentially what it is. There's always another level to get to as well. No matter where you're at, you can always get that little bit better, that little bit faster, that little bit smarter or more compassionate or whatever the desired end outcome is.
Yeah, there's a lot there to unpack. I think I'll ask you this then. I think we're all striving. A lot of us we're striving to be better. You're working with people who are striving to be better. Do you run into that I'll be better at all costs kind of mentality? Because I think sometimes we don't realize it. We're pushing so hard to be better that it's actually having a negative impact on our overall mental well-being.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, I've fallen victim to this too. In the name of what is what I ask them, you know. Again, we had a guy literally just on Saturday. So for accountability, he does 4 workouts a week and he sends me his workouts, or he sends me a picture of him after he's worked out. He tore his hamstring playing golf, and he said on the Monday, I've done a little bit of a Peloton, but I'm just going to rest it because I've got soccer on Wednesday. You've just pulled your hamstring, and now you're going to go play soccer, which is the sport which probably, you know, demands the impact of a hamstring more so than many others. You might be out of action for 12 weeks if you tear it. And at first there was some resistance. No, I have to because we said that, you know, going to hold me accountable. So yeah, equally, I want you to make sure that you're all good upstairs. That's what I'm fixated on. I'm not fixated on the size of your hamstrings. I'm fixated on why you want to have big hamstrings or functioning hamstrings and why you want to be able to get out on the bike and go play golf and do the soccer. So essentially, it's challenging in a healthy way and holding up that mirror and putting it back to them because it's not for me to decide what they can and can't do, of course, but is that going to be most healthiest for you? Because ironically, the reason why that's such a great question is because what might be healthiest is actually to do nothing.
Hmm.
So this is the biggest area for development I'm still working with my coach now, where again, you gym, or football, or whatever, and then your body is saying slow down, and then you do the workout anyway. That's why I hate that phrase. The only workout that you'll regret is the one that you didn't do. That's nonsense. What if you go and you injure yourself because of poor fatigue and poor form? So I don't believe or buy into that whatsoever. It's usually that people are compensating for something that's not been dealt with at a deeper cause, essentially.
Hmm. Yeah, I remember my trainer said something to me when I first met him. He said his first responsibility for me was to not break me any further. And made a lot of sense. And hearing you say that, I see why, because I think through the years, personally, I was that way too. Still, I think we all work on it, like you even said, but it's definitely something I'm finding as I'm getting older. It's becoming a little easier, but
Mm.
it's still not there yet. Something I read about you, and this I really want to ask you this because I love this part. For you, I saw something about getting your shit together. What does
Mm.
that mean to you on a personal and a professional level?
Great question. Personal level, I have to make sure that where possible, I'm operating as a rational adult. There's something known as transactional analysis where um, we operate in 3 states typically: parent state, adult state, and child state. So when we're getting really agitated and irrational and screaming and shouting, that's really the child state. When I'm level-headed and I'm focused and I'm speaking in fact, not in feelings, that's adult. And when I'm being judgmental and persecuting and commanding, that's often the parent. So the area I'm still working on, which I don't think anyone will ever perfect, is remaining in adult state as much as I can. So having my shit together for me means that I'm being respectful of my relationships, means I'm making time for myself. I'm having time for my family as well. If I'm not doing the best version of me, I'm not going to be the best version to my partner or to my mother or my father or my friends or, my niece and nephew. So I have to get my shit together. That looks like meditation. That looks like drinking water. That looks like eating healthily 80% of the time. That looks like getting outside even when it's raining and doing hard shit to make sure that I can function at the best level I can. And professionally, it's the same. It's the biggest learning curve, especially with the ADHD thing, is removing your worth from outcomes. If a client didn't sign or a prospect didn't sign up and they're in pain and I can help them, but they're just not ready. And then they want to, say they want to think about it, which always means no. Not taking that personally. If you have 6 discovery calls in a day and you don't land any of them, you start to second guess yourself. Is that about me? Is it about my offer? Is it about my copywriting's not good enough because I'm attracting the wrong people that message me? I don't know, but I have to dive deep into what that is. So that's been a huge element for me, is separating my emotions from outcomes for the business, ensuring that I'm speaking to my team in a compassionate and empathetic way, making sure that they feel safe, making sure they feel heard and understood. So yeah, I think a lot of the work I'm doing is just to be sort of here and be neutral, because a lot of my life has been spent like high emotion in the positive, but really low emotion in the negative, and not learning how to regulate those emotions. So I guess if I had to sum it up in one sentence, for me to have my shit together across the board, it would be emotional regulation, because that controls everything else, and learning how to navigate that as best I can.
Yeah, you know what I would add to that, and I think as you were saying it, I've never really heard, I don't really hear a lot of people do it, but I think we hear that phrase, get your shit together, but you actually defined your shit. And I
Mm.
think people don't define it at first, right? It's just this metaphorical thing and they are all over the place. But so for anyone listening, I think take and heed Adam's advice there. First, define your shit, and then you'll be able to get it together. Adam, I wanted to close with this. And as you were talking about that, some of the darker moments and when you're in the car and the phone rings and it's your mom, what I wanted to ask you was, have you ever contemplated and reflected on what if she hadn't called and you continue that drive and you're not here? How different would this world around you be, actually? And what kind of ripples do you think that would have played throughout people in your life and people you've come in contact with?
Yeah, I heard Keanu Reeves say this when he was asked about whether he believes in God or what happens when you go. And he said the people that loved us will miss us or something like that. And that was just so simple. He says the only thing I know is that the ones that love us will miss us. Something I think like that. Anyway, it was really poignant. I think it was on Stephen Colbert or something like that, but it was great. And that really stuck with me. And at the time, that's where a lot of the suffering and pain came from, was remunerating over what might have been. But then I go to the method that I've learned, which is, well, but you didn't. So it robs me, or it used to rob me of joy. It used to rob me of the present. It used to rob me of the future and certain decisions that I would make. Am I ready to have children? I still don't have children, but if am I ready to do that if I've not got my shit together and put my trauma and my past onto them? I have to keep working on myself in order to do that before I recreate this pain potentially for another little person that I'm now responsible for. So yeah, it was a lot of that punishing myself over and over and over again. How selfish are you? What are you doing? But again, the guilt and shame that anyone feels day to day comes from judgment. When you remove the judgment, there can be no guilt and shame. And the only reason why you judge other people perhaps is because you judge yourself so strongly. So then people ask me, how do you lose judgment? Well, you meditate, you journal, you practice gratitude, you get a therapist or a coach or a safe space to share. So yeah, it's not always accessible to people, coaching and therapy, but there are resources out there if you start looking, because we don't lack resources, we lack resourcefulness. And this was part of my problem as well. I knew what I had to do, but I just wasn't doing it. I wasn't doing it due to low self-worth. So yeah, I have thought about that a lot, mate, to be honest. I'm at peace with it now. And something I saw the other day, which was it really resonated. It said, trying to shame me for my past is like trying to rob my old house. Bitch, I don't live there anymore. So I thought that was awesome. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's it. I've had people criticize me when I've posted on LinkedIn about the suicide attempt, and some people said, "How dare you say that you drunk drive when I've lost my brother to drink driving?" And I know fully the ramifications of my actions that day and what might have been, but yeah, I'd say it's still a bit of a work in progress, but mostly I'm at peace with it now.
Adam, this has been you brilliant, brilliant guy. I was so happy that someone like yourself was gracious enough to come on here with me. I really appreciate it. And um, it's always a constant learning. And I think people are going to get a lot out of this. How can people get in contact with you, website, what you have going on? You want to plug anything here?
Oh yeah, mate. Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me as well. It's your podcast, and I'm humbled to be on it, mate. So thank you for that. It's doing good work. It's one of my friends, Tom Godfrey, that came on that
Mm.
recommended it to me, and that's why we've connected. So yeah, it's great. And these conversations, not just from myself, but the others that you've had in the past, it will be saving lives. I really do believe that. So thank you to you as well. Yeah, unfortunately, typing in Adam Smith is the most common name on the planet. So good luck finding me. But no, on LinkedIn, if you type in A-Game Consultancy, that'll probably lead you to my name. I've got a fairly modest following on LinkedIn, but it's yeah, you might find me on there. Website is www.agameconsultancy.com. TikTok's A-Game Consultancy, Instagram's A-Game Consultancy. So most of our content's on there. But yeah, if you can find me on LinkedIn, and yeah, I'm only a message away if anyone wants any help.
Yeah, fantastic. Also, shout out to Tom Godfrey, who was also a brilliant. Having him on was fantastic. Well, listen, Adam, I want to thank you again. I'll make sure to have things in the show notes. I really appreciate you being on. Thanks for everyone watching. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, man.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening, and remember, never hibernate on your goals.